All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth installment of our still unnamed show. I'm Alex Hurtad,
And I'm Matteo Heilig.
and we are coming to you here from Casa de Heilig in the heart of Venice, California. We're not going to mention the exact address because we want to keep a bit of anonymity about Matteo. And, he just wants to lead a public life.
All fan mail can be just commented on the bottom of this.
That's true. Little holiday edition of the show, coming to you live in the same room. Finally, it's such a joy to see the gloriousness that is Matteo Heilig's hair, and the rest of him is great too. But particularly those curly locks, as we're on the eve of Hanukkah and on Christmas Eve and Festivus. Happy Festivus, Matteo.
Thank you. And it's also it's going to be a treat to use. We're improving our equipment here. We're looking semi-professional. We have a microphone with styrofoam now, whatever this is. What do you call that?
It's like a little thing to reduce the wind, which we don't really have much of in here, so it's not really quite an issue. But yes, happy Festivus to everyone out there. Happy whatever you celebrate. Happy that. I hope it's time filled with family and loved ones. Plus, to my delight, I've been in Los Angeles for 4 days. It's rained 3 of those 4 days, including every day since the solstice. So winter brings rain, and maybe it'll rain every day of the winter in Los Angeles. Wouldn't that be a treat?
Yeah, that's not happening.
Well, never say never. Okay, so today we're talking about on-air sports announcers. In today's world of watching sports events, you get to listen to usually a color commentator and a play-by-play. The play-by-play being more of the straight man, the color being more of the, colorful man or woman. And some of our favorites we're going to talk about here today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to put off a shout out, but more of a shout down to Petros Papadakis. I was listening to him yesterday, and he was harking on the YouTube shows. He was saying it's not real. You don't have a show unless you're monetizing it.
Oh, really? So he was taking shots at us, Petros?
Not us personally, but
our ilk.
He was basically being old school and saying it's
shots fired.
It's not a show unless you're on TV or the radio.
Unless you're getting paid to do it.
Or if you're getting monetized, is he monetizing it?
Well, Petros, some of us still do it for the love of the game. I'm sorry that love is not there for you, and you just need to be paid by the man in order to do your craft. But we do it because we love it.
Don't say we'd be doing this for free. We don't want to put that.
Well, but we are doing it for free.
Yeah, but we don't want to be like those MMA fighters who say, "Oh, I'll fight anybody for free."
Yeah. Well, I won't fight anybody for any amount of money. My moneymaker is my face, and we can't jeopardize that. So I'm glad we addressed the Petro Papadakis sized elephant in the room, which is just an elephant sized elephant in the room. But yeah. So first one, who are we talking about, Matteo?
We'll just we'll get things going with pretty much the crux of what it means to be an announcer, the most important attribute, and it's the pipes. And it seems like today all the greats are pretty much in Marv Albert's mold. Everybody has that same heavy voice that
he talks like yes. It's a lot of yes.
It's just I don't know. Neither of us are professional linguists, but he speaks from the, I don't know if it's from the throat.
It's a guttural.
It sounds like, no, it's not guttural because it's smooth. It's just a smooth, heavy voice. I guess it's coming from the belly.
From the gut. That's Marv Albert's secret. It's just all comes from the gut.
And it really transcends all sports. That voice can be.
Well, Marv Albert transcends all sports because one of the things about Marv Albert is he will do anything. He's the hardest working man in broadcasting. I mean, he does NBA, NFL, NHL. He does. I mean, and I don't know how he must write it into his contract, but he'll just like jump ship and go do some announcing for some other, broadcasting network. I think most of them are pretty bound by what they can do, but Marv does not want to be held down.
Yeah, and he doesn't get the same holiday period that the players get. Like once the NBA Finals is out, he's not going off to Aruba on the banana boats. He's straight into the Great Western Forum, doing some amateur, just above amateur level boxing.
Well, he doesn't discriminate. He wants everyone to hear his beautiful velvety voice. But now Marv Albert, should we bring this up?
Transgressions aside, he's a freaky man.
Yeah, so he's had transgressions. So part of us thinks that maybe the reason why he has to do literally any job that comes his way is maybe like when they invited him back to broadcast, and they were like, all right, Marv, we'll take you back, but you're going to have to do whatever we ask of you. And he was just so desperate to get back to a working life that he was like, I'll do it.
It was the broadcaster's equivalent of like AA ball in Wichita.
Which coincidentally, Marv Albert also announces AA ball in Wichita. So just kicking it off with a Marv Albert and going next to someone who's near and dear to Mateo's heart.
Yeah, so Kevin, I mean, we've all listened to Kevin Harlan. He's been a TNT personality and a NFL Westwood One radio announcer for quite some time. This has pretty much been his year, though. He's jumped onto the spotlight. I became aware of him actually the first game of the season, of the NBA season. He kind of just throws a bunch of Hail Marys out there, and some of them work and some of them don't. And he really confused me with his first dunk call of the season. If we had a tech team here, they'd throw it up. But I'm just going to recite it because it's a quick 3 seconds. Kawhi Leonard had stolen the ball from somebody on the Warriors, and it was a pretty mild dunk. And Kevin Harlan's phrase, which he's used before, this is in his bag of tricks. It was, Leonard, if you have the hammer, you've got to use it. And I was like, Marv, no, you don't. You don't have to. The hammer isn't always the best tool.
Was it Marv or Kevin Harlan?
It was Kevin. I'm sorry, Kevin. And but I realized that I'd love to have him on to ask him about this. He's more famous though for his viral video of his play-by-play of a fan running onto the field, where he's bare-chested, beating his chest at the 20, at the 30, cuts back around to the 40. Oh, somebody stop that man! And he was very gracious about that. He didn't go on. He was invited to be on all the shows to talk about it, but he was scared for his job and didn't want to blow it up.
See, I didn't know that about Kevin Harlan. I'm sure I've heard his voice. I'm sure if I listened to it, I would recognize him. I want to applaud him though for acknowledging streakers when they run on the field. What is it with apparently sports these days where we do not want to show streakers on the field, and we want to pretend like they don't exist? It's a part of the sports, folks. They're as entertaining as people on the field. Plus, when you come into fact that like the NFL, you're basically watching people give each other like CTE and depression for the rest of their lives and concussions, but we can't show some guy running down. I mean, also, as it gets later in the year in some of these climates that football is being played in, if you're willing to streak across, the field of a Cleveland Browns game, you should be rewarded.
This was a week 1 in San Francisco, so
copy. Well, maybe not so much. It's a temperate climate. San Francisco it was probably really hot though. Probably could have gotten some serious sunburns from that one. So, don't knock it.
It was a Monday night game.
Monday night. Well, those are bright lights. Those bright lights can still. Anyway, we're digressing. So Kevin Harlan.
Yeah, he shows great enthusiasm toward the game, and he knows how to have a good time, which is not true of all the other announcers.
Not true of all the announcers. For example, Joe Buck. Not sure he has a pulse when he's up there, to be honest.
Joe Buck fails on both of those fronts. He doesn't have any pulse, and he doesn't even like sports. He's admitted himself that if he's not announcing, he's curled up on the couch watching The Bachelor with his wife.
Oh.
Even if the World Series is on.
See, I want to say Joe Buck just seems so smug all the time about everything. And smugness is not an attribute that I enjoy in other people.
Meanwhile, Kevin Harlan, if he's not working, he's sitting there diligently on his notepad, coming up with the next hyperbolic dunk metaphor.
Okay, well, so that brings us to a good point. Do you think they have these things, planned, or do they just come to them as it happens?
They have to have just a toolbox that they go to.
Yeah, but I think that's just their vocabulary and their vernacular
Mike
muscle.
Green isn't saying anything other than bang when a three is going down. He's just decided, he's settled.
Yes. Okay, sorry. So Mateo has a little audio clip. We're going to see if this comes through.
This is about 8 years ago. It was 2008, I believe, the playoffs. Back when LeBron was on the Cavs. And the
first time on the Cavs, yeah.
Cavs round one. And this is probably the best dunk call of all time. But lest we forget it, let's play it. We want to remind you of what this meant.
Here we go.
Garnett comes out on LeBron. Now they switch it. Here's Pierce again. A Smith screen. Posey will defend. Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Yeah, so I do know Kevin Harlan. That one's my favorite. What was the other one? Was it Jalen Rose? Or no, it was who was the
I've got
Mark Jackson with the Mama There Goes That Man. Hand down, man down. Back when the Lakers were good and Kobe was still destroying people. Yeah, those were some of my favorites. Mark Jackson, the height of
how are we just
color commentators?
The greatest call of all time.
Well,
there's that's the implications of that call are broad, like widespread. If the news is talking about how Putin has no regard for human life, I go, yeah. So I mean, neither does LeBron.
Well, especially when he's throwing it down with no regard for human life.
He's also shown quite the fascination with hand tools, namely hammers and anvils. But,
well, if you have the hammer, you've got to use it, Mateo. Haven't we already gone over this?
And I would implore you to look up the rest of them. Well, nothing will compare to that, but they'll show you some other phrases in his repertoire. And also you'll get to see the enthusiasm firsthand of him. He'll stand up for if you're looking at the bench or at the media table, he's the guy standing up and jumping out of his seat when this is happening. He's not sitting there idly like Ralph Waller or
Joe Buck, probably falling asleep in between, taking naps in between innings. So from the Kevin Harlans and Joe Bucks, just consummate professionals. That's their trade. We now move on to the color side of things. And I mentioned Mark Jackson, former player, former coach. The color commentator, always an interesting spot, often kind of occupied by a player. The color commentator usually is a player or a coach or someone who knows the game really well. Two of our favorites, well, my number one favorite is, and it's a shame that he doesn't do it anymore, I think a travesty, get your pens out, write your letters to ESPN, Bill Walton. Just a phenomenal orator, someone whose use of the language, it defies comprehension. And comprehension.
There may never be another Michael Jordan on the court. There will certainly not be another Bill Walton in the color seat.
No, for those uninitiated, there's a beautiful moment. It was during a Lakers Suns game back when the Suns had the likes of Raja Bell and Steve Nash, our good friend Boris Diaw, compatriot of mine, Boris Diaw, and Bill Walton, for reasons unbeknownst to anyone, was they were praising the president of operations for the Phoenix Suns
Jerry
for putting.
Colangelo?
No, it wasn't Jerry Colangelo. It was Jerry Colangelo's successor, whose name escapes me. And they were talking about, I don't even remember who the play-by-play was because it really doesn't matter. But all of us.
The important thing is he didn't stop. He let him run.
That's right. Well, with Bill Walton, you got to let him run, and we'll find out why. The the reason why it Bill Walton's beauty came from comparing Boris Diaw, calling Boris Diaw a classical human being and equating the ability to bring Boris F. Oh, sorry. Pardon my French. The comparing Boris Diaw to a classical human being, whatever that really means, and then the work of this president of operations of bringing Boris Diaw, the vision of to bring Boris Diaw to the Suns was, as he said, he compared it to Beethoven's some kind of symphony that ushered in the Romantic period, and that took place apparently 200 years ago to the day. It's got to be more than 200 years. There's no way in the 17th century. I mean, I don't know, actually. It could be. Anyhow, that's the kind of stuff that you expect from the beautician, the wordsmith that is Bill Walton.
I'd say he's more of an idea smith, because he was fumbling more than I am on this show looking for the right word. He wasn't sure if Symphony 9 shuffled in, ushered in. I think he settled on escorted in the age of romance.
But the great thing about Bill Walton is he does not back down. He's just going to keep it coming. That's a great one. Then we have our good friend Walt Clyde Frazier, who Mateo turned me on to a couple days ago. Who I didn't know he was a color commentator. Obviously, big player for the Knicks. He's a color commentator for MSG1,
and also noted.
Exuberant dresser.
He's the pitch man for
for the
gray beard.
Him and what's
Just for Men. Just for Men.
Yeah, the Just for Men but for your face, not for your hair. So you get that spackled gray. Him and Keith Hernandez, I believe. There's that one where they're like on the commode in the person's bedroom while they're getting busy, which is kind of creepy. Well, I'm not gonna lie. Anyhow, his use of the language also very poetic, very effervescent. You don't know where he's going to go. You think he's going to zig and he zags. He's that kind of guy. He's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, I like it, but it's definitely not. It's no Kevin Harlan. Kevin Harlan is throwing bombs all season.
Yeah.
Walt Clyde Frazier's going for base hits, and occasionally he'll get a double.
But see, so
he's not striking out too much. He might foul a few off, but none of those things are life changing the way a dunk that has no regard for human life might be.
But the problem there is that Kevin, it's a bit unfair because Kevin Harlan is the play-by-play, so he has the command of the radio, of the mic whenever he wants. Whereas, someone like a Bill Walton or a Walt Clyde Frazier has to find the lapse and just make do in that time. And I think what would be amazing is getting Kevin Harlan and Bill Walton together. That would be an unbeatable duo. TNT, ESPN, ABC. If you're listening, please make that happen. I think it would be nothing short of. I mean, I would just listen to it. I wouldn't even have to watch the games. You could get me to watch a Brooklyn Nets versus the Sixers game. And which would be a pretty terrible game. But I'd watch it to listen to those two. Well, Bill Walton would just complain about how big men aren't as good as they used to be anymore. And Kevin Harlan I bet everybody there would have too much regard for human life, playing not strong enough, not having the hammer and not using it.
Yeah, I mean, there might be some nails might be hammered in that. Who knows? And there's quite a few good big men on the Sixers. But
that's true. Bill Walton would probably have a lot to talk about. Speaking of a lot to talk about, John Sterling is our next topic here, and Mateo has some strong feelings about John.
Yeah, I don't think we have to cover him too much because the pundits have pretty much decided.
Covered it for
yeah,
us.
they've excoriated him. He's universally known as the worst baseball announcer for just really corny expressions. This is where I kind of drew a parallel with Walt Clyde. Some of those rhymes are kind of corny, I must say. I mean, some of them are good, but he does risk corniness. And then maybe it's a New York thing. I don't know. But John Sterling takes it to a whole nother level. He gets up there. If A-Rod hits a home run, he'll say, "Oh, an A-bomb for A-Rod." Just the dumbest stuff. And he's also been seen just blatantly lying on air. Like there've been
Like what? What would give me an
yeah,
example?
there was a dull game where the stands were half empty, and he's sitting there on the mic saying, "We've got a sellout crowd here at Yankee Stadium." And no, John, there's nobody there. But I don't know who you're selling that to.
Well, is he doing radio? Maybe. I mean, you gotta paint a picture.
Yeah, I think he does radio. It might have been a simulcast. A lot of those guys simulcast,
Yeah,
but it was really just an insult to the listener.
Yeah. Next up, going back to, so I guess Walt Frazier and Bill Walton are kind of in a class of their own. They were big in the 70s and 80s.
They also have great voices.
They have great voices. Their personalities may or may not have been influenced by heavy use of
Narcotics. Or we
well,
don't want to go that far.
not quite narcotics. Let's say
Substances.
yes, mind-altering substances.
And in Bill Walton's case, mind-altering music.
Right. Well, I was listening to a clip from him the other day where he wasn't the play-by-play or he wasn't the color commentator, unfortunately, anymore. But he was like a guest to talk about the Kings had like a Grateful Dead night, and he said he had seen like something like 843 Grateful Dead concerts, and he was like, "Well, that's less than 20 a year if you think about it." And I was like, "Right, okay, so that's not a lot to listen to the same kind of thing over and over again."
Yeah, that's Bill.
That's Bill. He knows what he likes and he sticks to it. But a bit of a different note, we have some color commentators today who are former players. And two that stick out in our minds are, especially on the national broadcasts, are Reggie Miller and Chris Webber. And I personally like Chris Webber. I think he doesn't do anything too flashy. I think Reggie Miller tries to get he gets a little too excited sometimes. He's a little excitable, and his voice is super nasally.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up hating both of these players as a diehard Lakers fan and unfortunately a Michael Jordan brown noser. But
who can blame you though? In the 90s, it was hard to not brown nose Michael Jordan. He's the greatest.
I was in tears during the game when Reggie Miller pushed him over to catch the ball and make a game-winning shot.
I went to a game at Staples Center, which must have been one of Reggie Miller's last games, where he got into a fight with like the entire Lakers bench right before the game was over. It was during back when Kobe was basically like the only person. It was like the Kobe, Sasha, right before they got Pau Gasol. It was not a great time for Lakers fans. It's when Kobe should have won more MVPs and Steve Nash won them instead. But anyway, I'm digressing.
Yeah, so both of these guys have really good insight, and I think they have a pretty solid job security because they're not afraid to voice their opinions either, which is refreshing. I guess the play-by-play guys are less apt to really disagree with a call or a policy of the league, but these guys, and this has been pioneered by somebody we haven't mentioned, who's also a great Jeff Van Gundy. You kind of have to grow into him.
Wait, is it Jeff or Stan?
Jeff. Stan still coaches. Jeff would partner with Mark Jackson as a two-way tandem, a double team. They would double team the color seat.
And basically, those games, there would never be a millisecond of silence between Marv talking and then Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy going back and forth all night long.
Jeff Van Gundy has a lot on his mind, and a basketball isn't like football. It's only 2.5 hours. It's only on for 2.5 hours, and they're actually playing for most of those 48 minutes. Yeah. So he probably keeps talking after the game. Who knows what time they make it home.
I wonder if they just like cut off his mic at any point. Just like, all right, we're done, bud.
I think he wields too much power. He's like He's on ESPN, so he's probably the Charles Barkley of ESPN. Charles Barkley being the
king of TNT.
yeah, their prized possession.
Yeah, I agree. And Chris Webber, I think, does a good job of, like Mateo said, both Reggie Miller and Chris Webber really bring in their, not really personal spice, but their insight and, taking people to task when they don't do as they see fit.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of people that can, tons of ex-players who could break down a game, so they have that, and then they also have, they're articulate and somewhat interesting. And so one thing that kind of, so I believe Reggie Miller partners with Kevin Harlan, and they're really the dichotomy of how they will describe a humanity altering dunk is quite telling. Reggie Miller, ever the pot stirrer, pretty much puts it on the guy getting dunked on, whereas Kevin Harlan celebrates the dunk itself. Reggie, I know for more than a handful of dunks, will not mention the dunker, but he'll say, let's say Zaza Pachulia. Well, that's too long of a name. Who's got a nice short? Well, we'll go with Zaza Pachulia. He'll say, let's say he gets dunked on by, doesn't even matter who he gets dunked on. He'll say, Zaza Pachulia, welcome to your Kodak moment.
Oh, that's so cheesy. See, I'd rather someone, I hate when they have, something they go to over and over again or something like that. It's just, it's a little hokey for my tastes.
But yeah,
so next we're going to go to a little, kind of talk about because now we were talking earlier with now like NBA League Pass and NFL Sunday Ticket, you're exposed to many more announcing crews than you were before. It used to be you pretty much just watch the games on TNT, ABC, and I guess you could get League Pass for a while, but now it always used to be on your TV. It was pretty pricey. Now you can pretty much just like legally or illegally stream most games, so you can listen to like Milwaukee Bucks, Homer fans, or Mateo's favorite, the Golden State Warriors announcers who just drive him up the wall. And personally, I can't really stand it either. They seem kind of Bush League, and I mean there are some that do a really good job, but for the most part, it's a little the homerism goes a little too far.
There certainly aren't any modern day Chick Hearns.
No, we're not. Chick, and I think did Chick just do it by himself?
No, Stu Lance is still there.
That's right.
The people are still walking up to the charity stripe.
Oh, the charity stripe. But yeah, I mean, I guess on one level it's like a nice infusion of like local color and vibe, but sometimes it can be a bit much. It's particularly, I'm fine with the play-by-play, like adding a little bit of, mustard to knowing the players and seeing them play every night, and that's, you get some cool insights. But especially when the color commentator is just a homer and just going after the refs for calls that are just clearly correct, or just not seeing the objectivity of the game at all, it can really be annoying.
I don't think that's that big of a problem. I think most of them are pretty honest.
So what bothers you about the Golden State Warriors then?
Their voices, and it's not that they're honest with the calls, but they're just the fawning over the Golden State Warrior players. It's just over the top. But yeah. I mean, everybody does that. It's just, I'm sure if I listen to the San Antonio Spurs broadcast as a Golden State Warriors fan and Spurs hater, I would feel the same way.
One that you should definitely check out is the Boston Celtics, because when I think of like a color commentator who goes after the refs for every call that goes against the Boston Celtics, it can be like egregious calls, and they are just like, how could he be making that call? That's a ref. That's a ridiculous call. Like, they just think their players are like infallible. It's like, they just shoved him out of bounds, for goodness sake.
Yeah, and then you got to mention in Los Angeles, Lawler. I mean, I'd put him as a C+ announcer.
Yeah, I'm not enamored with him.
He's pretty corny.
Yeah, he's pretty bad. So I think that about does it for our
Yeah.
little announcer
Yeah,
chat. What do you think, Teo?
Yeah, there's just one more who you're not going to appreciate this one. Joe Rogan
Oh.
with UFC. It's a trip. He gets really bombed up, gets in that seat, and I guess he knows. I don't know why he knows so much about MMA.
He's super into it. He was like one of the initial people. Fun fact, in addition to being like the Fear Factor guy from NBC, which is the last time you may be like, oh, Joe Rogan, I recognize that name. That's from Fear Factor. Or he's a big MMA head. You know, him and Dana White probably go way back.
the bald mafia.
The bald Fia. That's right. The bald too tight t-shirt mafia. And yeah, Joe Rogan. Apparently, maybe I'll have to check it out. A wordsmith on the mat.
Yeah, you might not have much time because I think they're trying to get rid of him. Which
Really?
yeah, I don't know who anybody else would watch.
I mean, if he can add color to people, he can make watching people eat worms palatable, then I'm sure he can do amazing things with the English language.
Yeah.
Well, that about wraps it up for us here in Studio 904.
Whoa! I thought we weren't giving away.
Well, you didn't. Nobody would have known.
We'll just call it.
2 on the nose now. They don't know what street.
We'll call it the Chickern Studio. And shout out to Vince Scully. We don't have to mention. I mean, nobody paints a picture of.
He's the one who did it by himself, right? It was just him. He was the whole kit and caboodle, all chicken,
enchilada,
whole enchilada. And it's about 12:30, so I'm getting a little hungry. So that's it for us from Venice, California. Next time we will have more chatter about a different topic. This has been our show with Alex Todd
and Mateo H.
And signing off, we will see you later.